Today, I read an article titled 10C Above Baseline that says we are heading for a global average temperature of 10 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial baseline temperatures in the coming 3 to 4 decades. We're about 1.3 degrees Celsius above the baseline temperatures of the early industrial revolution today, and we're already seeing positive climate feedbacks and climate effects, which are only going to exacerbate human emissions. There's a UN report that details 1.5 degrees above baseline, which is scary, and 2 degrees above baseline, which is frightening and terrifying. And according to these analyses, we'll be at 4C by mid-century. That's 30 years before the functional eradication of human civilization. And remember that there's a lag from when you stop producing carbon to the heating, which continues for decades. We should have started addressing this ecological and climate crisis on a global scale back in the mid-1970s when we first discovered it, but we didn't. We mucked around in denial, growing the global economy based on fossil fuels and the destruction of ecosystems over the last 50 years. Now, with 2020 vision, we can clearly see that we are staring down the barrel of global ecosystem collapse, which will take down human civilization and trigger the most grotesque wars, social collapse, famine, mass starvation, mass executions, a global holocaust. And that's what's coming down the pipeline. And all we have to do to get that is to keep doing what we have been doing for the last 50 years or so. Now, there's lots of reasons for this mess. The Cassandra effect is one. People don't like bad news, so they avoid talking about it. And plus, power elites pursue short-term gains at the expense of the long-term benefits for society, even when all the warning lights are flashing all the way to the final end of destruction. Now, I've known this intellectually since I was in my 30s, when I first started reading climate science, and I've known it in my gut for the last 5 years. I feel it aching. And I've understood that there's a spiritual dimension to this, like a hole opening up inside of me, a deep sadness. Allowing this to happen is wrong in so many different ways. It's wrong to deny future generations of our own race the pleasure of this planet. It's wrong because it's going to hurt our children and grandchildren and the poorest people on the planet, and all of us, eventually. It's wrong because we shouldn't allow the things that we have created to be destroyed. Why would you build a global civilization only to destroy it? It simply makes no sense. And it's wrong because being a living organism on this planet comes with a responsibility to the superorganism that is our host. I've recently spent a few days with a friend at his house. And when you do that, you enter a guest-host relationship. The guest abides by the rules of the house, and the host gives up a few things in order to allow the guest the freedom to come and go and to live their life in that place. And this calls for a bit of compromise on both parts for it to work. And herein lies the problem in Western society. We don't have a part of our emotional or spiritual or intellectual capacity allocated to looking after our host, the global host, the living planet, Mother Nature, Gaia, the biosphere, the ecosphere, Imperium Vitae Planeta, Vita. Western people don't honour our host. As an example, Australia is the nation of the Great Barrier Reef, which is dying due to global heating caused by the emission of greenhouse gases. And Australians have one of the highest per capita emissions of greenhouse gases in the world. And yet only a very small proportion of our public are even angry that the reef is dying and that we're at fault. Fewer, again, are doing anything meaningful about it. We Western people have a deep spiritual imbalance between the world we live in and the world inside our head. The expression that I use is belonging. People with Western culture don't belong on Earth. They don't belong on a planet with a complex biosphere that produces oxygen and temperature regulation and where the plankton makes the clouds. Western cultured people rightly belong on a a space station powered by a fusion reactor where they aren't allowed in the engine room to wreck the machinery that keeps them alive. Our Western spiritual values do not foster the sorts of behaviour that maintains the things that we love. And now it's getting so late in the day to change things for the better. Let's say that you discover that the Great Barrier Reef was dying and you wanted to do something about it. Well, good luck there, you know. It's thousands of kilometres long. The heating problem is global and has been building for 200 years. You have only a small amount of money and just a little influence. What could you possibly do that would make a meaningful difference? The point is that if you cared and had empathy for the host, you'd do something anyway. You do it because it's right, and you do it because it honours your responsibility to the host. So the mission of Vita is to try and find a way to get people to change their spiritual relationship to the planet into a form that fosters actions commensurate with fixing the climate crisis and the ecosystem collapse problem. Failing this, we are 7+ degrees above baseline and the annihilation of most life on Earth in the coming decades. That's the game that we're playing, and that's what Vita is about. Vita is an institution that has a mission to change the spirituality of Western people, to foster them into right action that avoids the destruction of life on Earth and ushers in the verdant age, the age when human civilization and the biosphere live in synergy deep into the long future. Please join us on this mission.